Red Fox was a very famous African-American stand-up comedian and actor. At his peak, he made nearly $4 million a year. Foxx won a Golden Globe Award, was nominated in 3 other categories, and was also nominated 3 times for Primetime Emmy Awards for his part as Fred G. Sanford on the TV show Sanford and Son. He was one of the first big-time black TV stars, setting the stage for Eddie Murphy and others. He was even ranked as one of the 25 best stand-up comedians of all time. His job was to make other people laugh and be happy, but his own life was empty of laughter and happiness. This man died a failure, being mistreated and deeply in debt. It was a terrible end to a long and successful career. Foxx's death will be one of the saddest things you ever see on TV. We need to make a huge step forward to really understand how Foxx got to this point in his life. Go back in time and see how his humble roots made him who he is today. He was born on December 9, 1922. After his 2 older brothers had already died, his given name was John L. Roy Sanford. When I was a kid. After serving in World War I, Foxx's father, Freddie Sanford, worked as an electrician and car mechanic. Later, 8 years later, Foxx's father up and left, leaving his only living older brother, their mother Mary Hughes, his grandmother, and his minister to raise him. His mother also left him and his brother to look for better work in Chicago. She left the kids with their grandma and the minister to help. Foxx remembered these hard times. The family didn't have much money. In St. Louis, I stayed with my grandmother in her old house that looked like a log cabin. Foxx turned into that unruly kid because he grew up without a father or mother in St. Louis, Missouri, more specifically on Chicago's South Side. It was said that he was kicked out of school for throwing a book at his teacher on his first day there. Foxx and his brother would move to Chicago to be with their mother in the end. Foxx went to Dewsable High School in the Bronzeville area of Chicago. Here he met Harold Washington, who would become mayor of Chicago. And some friends from school made a washtub band called the Bonbons. As a youth getting ready to become an adult, Foxx and his bandmates were eager to make it in a world where white people were the majority. In 1939, they packed up their little worldly things and got on a train going to New York. Foxx and his friends used a hatch on top of the train to sneak inside, which made the trip funny. They didn't find out about this until after the door had closed behind them. He admitted that we cried on the way from Chicago to Weehawken as we drove across the Midwest. As soon as they got to Harlem, New York, they started to play on street corners and in bus stops. The band's name had been changed from the Bonbons to the Jump Swinging Six at this time. A new place, a new self. It was at the Apollo Theater in 1941 that they got their big break. They were on the national radio show Major Beau's Amateur Hour. The group did so well on this radio talent show that they got 2nd place and were booked for a week at a nightclub in New Jersey. You might have thought that by now the group would be stronger together and have more faith in their shared dream. After everything they went through together, your hopes would be crushed. Foxx was one of the people who left the group, and they all went their different ways. Foxx earned extra money by doing odd jobs like washing dishes. He did this at Jimmy's Chicken Shack, where the famous jazz musician Charlie Parker worked. This is where Foxx met Malcolm Little, who used to work as a cook and would go on to become Malcolm X, a very important civil rights leader. But before they had that big future, Foxx and Malcolm were called Chicago Red and Detroit Red because they had red hair. And every night they did drugs, slept with women, and did small crimes. Malcolm X wrote in his book that Foxx was the funniest dishwasher on this earth. That's a great bond. Foxx may have made a big change after this. However, his singing career had not gone as planned, even though he never gave up on it. He did wash dishes and paint signs every once in a while to help pay his rent, but he also had something else he could do to make money. So he started going to comedy clubs and other places where there were open mic nights, but some days it wasn't enough, so he'd steal milk or sleep in the halls. There was a short time when the jail was another place to rest because of minor crimes like stealing a milk bottle and sleeping in a hallway. There was another thing coming that would mess everything up. After eating half a bar of soap before his physical test, Foxx avoided the draft, but this caused his heart to race. Foxx chose to try his hand at music again after he didn't get called up. This time he was able to record 5 songs for the Savoy label. At this point in time, people were willing to try new things. When his singer friend Joanne Baker told him that the Baltimore bar Gambies was looking for an MC, Foxx went on to make a living by making people laugh. Before he started, though, he changed his name to allow himself to mentally start over as a comic. Foxx was called Chicago Red because of his red hair, so he chose the name Red as his first name, adding an extra D to make it sound more unique. After that, he took baseball player Jimmy Foxx's last name as his second name. This is how comic Red Foxx came to be. He then got his things together and went to Baltimore. But Red Foxx would have one of the worst starts to a career as a stand-up comedian that anyone has ever had. Foxx talked about how hard it was to be a new stand-up comedian in Baltimore. "There's no point in my lying. It was very hard to work in that town." He became tougher after what happened in Baltimore. He chose to go back to New York even though people were more open to him there. He thought it would be best to gain more experience first. When he got back to base, he saw a chance to record a bunch of comedy albums in Newark, NJ, and he took it. This is where he met Evelyn Killebrew and married her. The records didn't do very well though, so he started performing regularly at black theaters and bars on the East Coast. People called this the chitlin circuit. He had a lot of success. He became famous for his unique sexy acts and sarcastic comments about love and how people of different races interact with each other. He then made another smart move just as things were getting better for him. He chose to start a comedy act with Slappy White because they were now friends. They will be known as Foxx and White. Together they had a lot more success when they toured the national chitlin circuit in the late 1940s and early 1950s. Reports say that these two shared the stage and made a good amount of money every week. They were having a good time. But their biggest show together would be their last at the Palace on Broadway. The relationship that had been so good up until this point seemed to break down for some reason. Things got so bad that the friends could no longer work together. They would never stand up together again, but they would always be friends. Even though Foxx's group attempt failed a second time, at least this time it paid off. One of those benefits was that Dinah Washington, who was a huge star at the time, saw and liked his show with White because it was so famous. That's why she asked Foxx to open for her on her American tour. It just so happened that Foxx had been Dinah's driver for a while. He didn't have to think too much about going to California because his marriage was about to end. But Foxx took a big step when he went to Cali, and what he met there wasn't what he thought it would be. Foxx was angry about the situation and said, "I remember going over there once for an audition, and at first I couldn't even get in because it was all white." He was one of the first black comics to appear in the popular Los Angeles Strip, but mostly white audiences didn't like his act because it was sexual and violent. Foxx worked for Washington for only 1 month because he thought California was much more divided than New York. It was true that Foxx couldn't do his work in places where white people usually went. Therefore, he worked as an assistant to radio DJ Johnny Otis, played a part on Otis' local TV show, and also did stand-up comedy by himself. But the good thing about this difference, if you can call it that, was that Foxx could try out more obscene content without thinking about going to jail for breaking the law. Because of this, his crazy news show became famous in Los Angeles' black clubs. After that, he married singer Betty Jean Harris, who at the time was a dancer and showgirl. Foxx was having a good day. When Foxx was playing at the Brass Rail in Los Angeles, record producer and owner of Dotone Records Dootsy Williams saw him. Williams thought Foxx would be a good fit for an album, so he talked Foxx into putting together an album of his stand-up comedy. He started by making Laugh of the Party, a popular comedy album. Then he made another 54 records, which together sold over 10 million copies. Because they were so rude, some of the tracks were never played on the radio. Another choice he made was to make what he called party albums. These were spoken-word albums without music that would appeal to everyone in the U.S. He was able to get along with people of different races by playing the mostly white bass in Street East. This is why he was so successful. He played to mostly white crowds in Las Vegas in the Summit Club on the Sunset Strip in less than a year. places where no black comic had ever been before. Foxx was probably thrilled about this win, but he didn't yet know or feel how it would really affect his comedy business. His performances got the attention of casting managers and TV producers. For Foxx's big shows in New York, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas, Frank Sinatra set everything up himself because he thought the show was great. Not only Frank was pleased, when Hugh Downs saw Foxx in 1964, he was also pleased. He quickly got Foxx a spot on the Today Show. Was thought to be too much for TV, which is why TV agents didn't contact her at first. But Foxx did so well on the Today Show that everyone realized they should have given him a chance sooner. Even Foxx wasn't ready for what happened next after that TV show. Lots of invitations to almost all of the big talk shows on TV came in from everywhere. On a number of talk shows after this, they spoke. This includes The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and a number of other nationally broadcast shows. Foxx was getting so big and well-known that when the famous Aretha Franklin didn't show up for a show, she filled in for her and entertained the crowd for almost 2 hours. He gave such a great show that he was offered a record-breaking contract worth almost $1 million right away. His hard work was beginning to pay off. He used to live in a shack with his brother and grandma. Now, the boy had homes in St. Louis, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. Foxx's writing with lots of bad language got more and more rude over time. Thanks to his TV performances, his records were becoming more and more well-known. But his deal with Dutone wasn't making him as much money as he had hoped, so he left and signed with MF Records, King Records, and then Loma Records. Even though Foxx was having a great time at work, things were going badly at home, even though he was clearly to blame for the problems there. Foxx was said to be cheating on his second wife, Benny Jean Harris, just like he did in his first marriage, which ended badly. Harris had decided to quit her job in show business and become a full-time housewife. She had a daughter who was 9 years old. Foxx had to hire a manager for his businesses, such as Red Fox Enterprises and a chain of record stores. Now that he had enough money to spend, Harris had no trouble filling this job since she wasn't busy with anything else. Foxx's marriage to Harris fell apart after 18 years of marriage because of claims of cheating. He filed for divorce because he and Harris were no longer compatible. Eventually, though, he found out that Harris had been stealing his hard-earned cash while they were married. She stole more than $110,000 from his bank accounts in different businesses while she was running his business. He clearly didn't trust her. So as part of the divorce agreement, Foxx got a restraining order that said she couldn't take, hide, or secret their property from their Las Vegas house. He went back to work while that was still burning in the back seat. Things were going really well for Foxx, so when the chance came up to start working in movies and TV shows, he was all set. In fact, he had already been in a movie in 1960 as himself, playing a piano player at the Roses, but he wasn't given credit for it. 10 years after their first movie role, they got their big break. Foxx was in the 1970 movie Cotton Comes to Harlem, which was directed by Ossie Davis. He played Uncle Bud with heart here. With good sense of fun and honesty, an old junk dealer finds a huge amount of cash hidden under a bale of hay. Even though they only had a small part with little screen time, it was more than enough. This was the start of something very big. There was a big-time director looking for a lead character for a new show he was making. The show was based on the popular BBC comedy Sanford and Son, which was about a tough dad who owns a junkyard with his family. Norman Lear was the big-time director, and he had just finished making the amazing, well-liked sitcom All in the Family. Many people were interested in what this guy would make next because he was so hot. That's why Lear and his partner Bud Yorkin stopped looking for someone when they saw Foxx as Uncle Bud. Foxx was great in the part. Once they had all of the group together, Sanford and Son would air for the first time on NBC on January 14, 1972. The show was so groundbreaking because it was one of the first in history to show people of color with respect, kindness, and affection. It spoke to a lot of people because of this. Plenty. Along with being an instant hit, the Foxx's character Fred G. Sanford became a common name. He named the character after his brother, not his runaway father. It became just as well known as Archie Bunker from Lear's first big hit, All in the Family. A lot of people were watching the new show Sanford and Son. During the first 4 years of its 5-year run, the series was always ranked in the top 10 TV shows. At one point, the show was so popular that NBC showed it twice a week with the screw-up dad yelling. Fox was so well known for making up fake heart attacks that even the network knew he had become the show's star. This was the kid whose job it was to wash plates years ago. Fox was making $35,000 a show, which made him one of the best-paid TV actors in the world. He was without a doubt the highest-paid black performer on TV. What did he do with the cash? 5 homes, a TV production company, and a home were bought by him. There is a theater management company, a beauty salon in Hollywood, and a bar in Los Angeles. By the end of the second season of the show, he had all of these things. He started to fight with his network executives about artistic freedom, working conditions, and money around this time, but he didn't know why. Fox would do something that caught everyone by surprise around the middle of the 3rd season. He just stopped coming to film. Surprised. The network quickly cut his part from the last 6 shows because he didn't show up for work. NBC sued him for $10 million because he was breaking his contract. He finally came back to finish all 6 seasons of the show. Fox was still buying expensive things as the show's 4th season began. On December 31, 1976, he met Joy Yun-Chi Chung at the Wild Horse Pass Hotel in Las Vegas. Her job at the Las Vegas Hilton was to serve drinks. She was 20 years younger than him. Fox chose to marry Joy right after they met. Joy had just come back from Korea. Fox kept getting better and better. 6 Emmys were given to Fox because of Sanford and Son over the course of its 5-year run. Even with all of his success, Fox was kind and careful to remember his past and the people he met on his way to the top. He was always willing to help other artists who were having trouble or didn't have enough money. He once gave $3,500 to help star Pat Morita buy his first house. He named show characters after his friends. His Los Angeles comedy club gave many new comics their first stage time, which was another important thing he did. He became known for teaching stand-up artists in a kind and friendly way. Richard Pryor said, "I learned a lot working at Red's Club because Fox was my mentor. It was fun to watch him every night, and he always made me feel good." That wasn't all he did. He went on to say nice things about other comics. One example is that he told Johnny Carson about Flip Wilson's skill, which helped Flip's success. Even with all of these things, there were still people who didn't like Fox. Some people said he was just negative, stereotypical, selfish, and full of himself. Fox replied, "That's what hurts me more than anything else." He wasn't happy with the review. Sanford wasn't happy to see blacks attack a man who was making a living. He asked the government for something important. In 1977, Sanford and Son was taken off the air for some reason. Fox tried to keep his career going by getting the richest TV deal ever to be the star of the Red Fox Comedy Hour, an ABC comedy variety show that didn't last long. There were a lot of people who watched the show, but it was canceled after its first season. By the early 1980s, Fox wasn't as important as it used to be. He was in a lot of debt, had lost a few businesses, and things at home were a mess. His second marriage ended badly after only 3 years, and this would be his third. Joey replied by filing her own divorce claim, accusing him of being cruel because he had hit her with a gun. They finally got a divorce in 1981, and he had to pay a $300,000 payment. He told her, "I've been married 3 times and I'm out after they paid. I'd rather have kids because the money I lose in the split should go to the kids, not some guy." He lost so much money that he went bankrupt in 1983. After that, he was in a number of legal fights, including a disagreement over an ABC contract and claims of attacking an employee and bothering a waitress. The IRS was like a wolf standing outside Fox's house of straws. It was salivating over the juicy, fat $2.5 million Fox owed in back taxes and couldn't wait to pounce. Fox had to focus on his stand-up job in Las Vegas because of this. In 1986, he tried something else called The Red Fox Show, but it didn't last long. The next year, his Broadway show, Red Fox and Friends, did not do well. But something much worse was about to happen. The IRS had finally had enough, and on November 28, 1989, agents broke into Fox's house and took almost everything in it to try to get enough money to cover his back taxes. Police took his home in Las Vegas, 7 expensive cars, and more than $12,000 in cash. And all of their guns, but they were kind enough to leave him with just the bed. Even though Fox's finances were a mess, he had worked with Eddie Murphy on the movie Harlem Nights. Murphy was so impressed by Fox's chemistry with Della Reese, a friend from the chitlin circuit, that he wrote a new sitcom just for the two of them, which premiered in 1991. Fox then got married again. He was broke, but he thought his new wife, Kaho Cho, loved him for who he was, not what he could give her. He said, "She saw me with a nickel, and I hope she'll see me with a dollar." Finally, he appeared in the 1991 TV show The Royal Family with longtime friend Della Reese, just as Eddie Murphy had planned. It looked like the show was about to really take off and do really well. Something that would bring Fox back to some of his old glory, but tragedy would happen so quickly. Fox was having a conversation with an Entertainment Tonight reporter on the set of The Royal Family during a break on October 11, 1991. A producer told him to rehearse with his co-star Della Reese, even though he didn't have any words in the scene. There were a few words between Fox and the producer, but he went on with the practice and then passed out right there. Many people knew Fox's character from Sanford and Son for fake heart attacks, so they all thought it was a joke. This time, though, the 68-year-old wasn't kidding, and it was too late. Fox was rushed to Queen of Angels Hollywood Presbyterian Medical Center, where doctors and nurses worked hard to save his life. But 4.5 hours after being admitted, he died. Fox, who was known as the king of the party records, used the success of Sanford and Son to inspire a new generation of comedians. He felt compelled to use his personal platform to help black performers get started, such as Richard Pryor and Bernie Mac. These performers influenced the styles of Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and Jamie Foxx, who even took his last name. This same famous person had died so terribly, leaving behind nothing and over $3 million in tax debt. Eddie Murphy and a few other black stars had to pay for Red Fox's funeral. It had been a rough hand for Fox, going from a shack in St. Louis to the castles of Las Vegas and back to nothing. Red Fox is still remembered on the Walk of Fame in St. Louis and on the Walk of Fame at the famous Apollo Theater.